Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you, Emma.
I'd like you to just take a few moments to introduce yourself.
My name is Jacob Eyeru. I am the chairperson of the National Youth Council for the tenure 2020 to 2025.
So basically, you're more like an MP.
Not in the amount they earn.
Tell the young people what's the National Youth Council. They need to maybe understand it a little bit more.
Great. The National Youth Council is the apex leadership body for young people in the country. Mm-hmm. It is the structure that represents all the youth of Uganda. Mm-hmm. And even in the process of constituting the National Youth Council, all the youth are involved. They start from lining up in their villages. There's that election that happened before the main election.
The adult suffrage.
Exactly. Youth choose their 9 leaders in their village, and those 9 then go to the parish and choose the 9 leaders of the parish. The 9 of the parish go to the sub-county, choose the 9. Then 3 at the sub-county head to the district, choose the 9. Then 3 come to the national, choose the 11 of the National Executive Committee.
Who are these 3?
I'm going to come to that. And then the 11 is where I am chairperson. So the 3 who come in upwards are the office of the chairperson of the level, say if it's sub-county or district, the secretary for finance at that level, and the Secretary for Female Affairs. And the Secretary for Female Youth Affairs must always be a female by gender. It is a provision that looks to ensure that Uganda keeps up with our push for gender equality and have the 1/3 rule respected, to have at least 1/3 of each gender. So the
what
female.
If all of them are women? 3?
There's no problem. In fact, Kampala, for example, all the 3 were women. Yeah, so if you're meeting the chairperson, you're landing on a woman. If you're meeting the finance secretary, you're landing on a woman. And it would be beautiful if that can come out of the entire country. Because if there's no provision to have a woman as one of the 3 as a must, I don't know if we would have a lot of women, from my experience.
So those 3 are the ones that constitute the electoral college.
Yes.
What about the normal young person who maybe is not in the electoral college system? How do they get to really understand this electoral college? Because how do they get to have ownership of the National Youth Council as their representative body?
So the first thing that we are trying to do better is to popularize the National Youth Council itself, so people can know it exists. When people know Parliament exists, they begin to question how is Parliament formed, and what is the relevance of Parliament. What has been lacking has been even the knowledge of the existence of a National Youth Council, except around elections, and usually that's for a few politically sharp people looking for opportunity. The National Youth Council is supposed to draw in all the young people in interest, and in terms of adding their voice. So in doing that, building that over 5 years, you're able then at the 5th year to have young people who know the National Youth Council elections are going to happen, and they will engage in large numbers. In this time, students were home during our elections, and so for some reason, it drew in much more participation than previously. But in my tenure of leadership under the National Executive Committee, we agreed that we are putting publicity of the National Youth Council out there, so youth then can have more engagement with young people's issues with the structures. And it's very important that we actually achieve that, because whether we achieve it or not, the major actors on young people's behalf are within the National Youth Council. The platform of Parliament, the members of Parliament are members of the National Youth Council. The National Executive Committee are also incorporated there. You have genuine access to the President, the head of state, who is the final authority on matters of how the country runs. And that structure, therefore, is a very big opportunity for young people to make sure that their issues come through, and young people can lead up with that.
What role do you play as the chairperson and as the Youth Council in influencing policy in Parliament, for example?
Thank you. One, we can actually play an initiation role of legal framework. And we are working on a law that we think is very relevant for young people. Then we use our capacity of membership in there, which is the 5 youth MPs, to go ahead. But the National Youth Council does not rely on only the MPs. So many people went through the hands of the National Youth Council as a grooming ground for their leadership. Today, you have Honorable Kanya in Parliament, who was from the National Youth Council. You have the Honorable Wilson Kajwenge, who represents that is in Chiruhura district, Nyabushozi County, from the National Youth Council. You have the Honorable Frank Tumwebaze, came from the National Youth Council. You have the Honorable Peter Ogwang, came from the National Youth Council. The Honorable, there's so many. So when you look at it, the Honorable Fadil from Kapchorwa. So when you look at it, you have a lot of people. Mpaka, you know, Honorable Abe, the former chairperson, is in there. Honorable Badeke from Soroti is still in there. So all these people now form the gravity that you need to push the matter. So in trying to unite those people, Parliament has a forum called the Ghana Parliamentary Youth Forum.
Before you come to the forum, you hinted on the 5 MPs. How does the NYC get to send these MPs? And because there's been a divide between the MPs and the council.
Yes.
But you seem to say that they are part and parcel of the youth council.
Exactly.
Could you explain a bit more about that?
So by law, they are part and parcel of the youth council. One of the challenges I've had with Parliament is attendance of members. It has not made them non-members, you know. And even for the record non-attending member who was a youth MP for Eastern Uganda, where I come from, in the previous term. And that's one of the reasons why I ran, to try and change how people look at the platform of youth leadership. Even that did not constitute non-membership. The man did not attend Parliament from swearing in until the final salary. Even when they invited him for disciplinary sitting to discuss why he's not attending, he did not come for the disciplinary sitting. So it is important for us to see that that needed to change. So they are members. What we have definitely worked on first was to say, for young people to achieve anything in terms of progress, there needs to be a unity among the youth MPs and the National Youth Council leadership. And that, I can tell you, is at perfect level with us. In the previous National Youth Council executive, the sittings they had with the youth MPs in all 5 years, to have all youth MPs in one room with them was 0. In ours, we have not gone 1 year. We sit whenever necessary. And whenever necessary has now gone past 5 times, you know. So we were trying to make sure that those linkages matter, the agenda matters, and young people have focus in terms of what they can achieve.
And in terms of building that linkages, who do these MPs report to? And what are those specific organs of the Youth Council that you need to mention? Because we've just heard about NEC.
Yes. So what you asked initially was, how are they constituted? While the National Executive Committee is constituted by the District 3, the regional youth MPs are constituted by the Sub-County 3. So their college is much bigger.
That is the chairperson, vice, and the female affairs.
At the Sub-County. They vote the regional youth MPs. That the National Female Youth MP now comes to the level of the National Youth Council as well, and she is voted by the 3 from each district.
That is still the chairperson?
The chairperson, the finance, and the female affairs.
Okay.
Now, when you come to how they report, firstly, they are also members of the National Delegates Conference, which is the highest organ of the National Youth Council. The National Delegates Conference is formed by the 3 at the district, who by law must meet at least once. That meeting has been subject of interest for meeting the day before Youth Day, so we can aggregate the issues and present them on International Youth Day to the country. Because then you have picked the views from each district and tried to build a consensus position on what the priority views are and how do you move on a priority agenda. So that really is how we are moving. So they are supposed to be members of that, and they are supposed to come and account to that constituency. I can assure you that in this tenure, they will come and they will account.
That is to the council? To
the council, okay. Yes, because that council constitutes...
Could you rate again who is the council?
The council, the National Youth Council, is the 3 people that sit. That's the National Youth Council seating. So it has delegates to the council. But the structure of the National Youth Council is the entire youth leadership up to the village. So that's why we say the National Youth Council structure has over 600,000 elected leaders. But then the National Youth Council seating has delegates to the conference or the council seating, which is a 3 per district. So it comes to about 428 under the 146 districts. But then you usually also incorporate a few voices. The civil society voices are also there. Private sector voices are also there. They are members of constituting that sitting of council. So in totality,
how do the civil society and private sector come in the electorates?
So what happens is that the National Youth Council works with stakeholders. It's very important that the work of stakeholders is acknowledged and their experience and especially learnership from the field is beneficial to the youth. Most of the times when we are speaking as young people, we don't speak from a position of research we speak from a position of sentimentalism. Based on my own experience, if I see that this road next to us is not tarmacked, I'm going to tell you that government is not tarmacking roads because I have not gotten out in lockdown and I've been here for maybe 5 years and my primary school is there, my secondary school is there, and maybe I dropped out. So I don't know about tarmacking of roads. It does not make sense to me to say there are 6,000 kilometers of road tarmacked in 3-4 years. It doesn't make sense. What makes sense to me is that there is dust for the last 6 or 4 years
on
my particular road. So my perception, my views are a bit clouded by that thought pattern. Civil society now comes in and says, look, that is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is to say, what has the country done as a whole? And does that meet the progress I am willing to sit by? Is it a rationing that we are trying to here and there? So that kind of understanding comes from civil society. Private sector comes in as well.
We have had incidences where there's been a feel or an understanding from youth councils and governmental structures that civil society are opposition and may not necessarily align with the agenda that the council has. How are you going to deal with that myth?
Firstly, the National Youth Council is not, I don't know what you mean by an agenda, but the National Youth Council is a political entity that's semi-autonomous. And with the 2010 amendment,
that to the young people who may not know these terms?
Yeah. So, okay. So the National Youth Council is semi-autonomous. It's under the ministry as an organ because youth generally fall under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. But it's a semi-autonomous entity that its affairs are run by it. No one decides for us what our work plan will be. No one can tell us what we cannot do and what we can do, as long as it's within the laws of Uganda. And we are also representative of youth voices, so it really does not, we don't depend on what the Prime Minister wants to achieve. We don't depend on what the President wants to achieve. We depend on what we need the President to achieve. I don't know if that makes sense now. So the second thing is that we are constituted in the multi-party framework of Uganda, which is to say every party is allowed to participate. So the National Youth Council at the national level has members of NRM, has members of NUP, it has members of FDC. In fact, I won the election against someone of FDC. When people were saying that the National Youth Council it's an NRM affair. The FDC brother of mine from Rukunjiri, called Ham, actually scored over 100 votes in a college of 400. So that has by no means a show of NRM alone. Then you have brothers like Comrade Matanda from Bududa. He's in the ANT, and he is the political head of their youth attempt. So you cannot say it is a mere representation. It's a high level representation. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that we don't push the agenda of government. We push the agenda of young people for government to adopt. There will be times when we agree with government, and then there will be times when we don't agree. The question is it in the interest of the young people to agree or to disagree with government? That's basically it.
We have over 15 million students.
Yes.
And most of them come to even higher education and also leadership councils for the students' councils.
Yeah.
Guild and so on up to the Uganda National Students Association.
Yep.
How does that relate? You could answer that as you finish
CSOs.
The issue of the CSOs and the private sector and the Muntu Wawansi who is not concerned about
all this,
any of the organs,
Yeah.
and how do they relate? Because we have been having a lot of Twitter spaces
Yeah.
discussing business, chikubo, what, and the ideas of the programs NYS is running were a little bit far-fetched. They're like, oh
Yeah.
no, I'm not in the party, I'm not in RM, I'm
Yeah.
not this. So
Yeah.
how could you demystify those things and simplify it for them?
I would say, starting with the CSO question, no one doubts that most of the work done in this country, the achievements of this country's government in allowing CSO to operate is also actually accepting that you have to work as partners. Most of the work we see in health for some functioning is a product of USAID and partners. Most of the work you see in economic livelihoods and so on is for people like you, Faraja, people like the Economic Policy Research Center, civil society organizations that work, restless development, open space. Those kind of people that invest their time into a non-profiteering motive. But how do we make society function better? As National Youth Council, we understand the relevance of that and the contribution that is indelible. That is not, you cannot wish it away. It's a very big contribution, and that's why we must have a working relationship with CSO. That's why we must listen to them, even if we are political. So, yes, there are CSOs that have made it an agenda to check government. And some have made it a consistent agenda that it is no longer possible to say they are not working for opposition. That's a political necessity to also make sure that the political party is not thinking that you're only having friends. Even your friends can think and critique you, but even your enemies can organize with the opportunities in the country to see how they can take you out of power. So it is not a politically myopic idea to say some CSOs are political and others are not. It is just basically the politics and how it plays. It's like lobbyist groups that side. Now, for the young person in some village, maybe in Mawokota North, or in
even Kamocha here.
Kamocha, that young person who feels like the National Youth Council is not something that's connected to them. In one way, they are right. In another way, and therefore the bigger way, they are totally not. In the way in which they are right is that the National Youth Council, in its history, has not shown this young person that we are here and we are here for you. Parliament has done it in different ways. In one way, they have said we are here for you, we need cars to come and see, so they justify 200 million for their cars. And it makes sense to some voters. In another way, they have said, no, we are here for you. We have appropriated more money for the health sector to actually get you more drugs in your hospitals. In another way, they have spoken to them. What has the National Youth Council done for the young person that the young person should know? That is the question. The first solution to that question is the National Youth Council developing a strong communication capacity that people notice. For example, we are not forced to watch the news, but because the communication capacity of particular news stations has become so strong that you can't help but realize that they're a relevant thing for me to watch. That's why we watch news, and it's now called prime time on TV. But if someone else put their news at say 3 p.m. and they call it prime time and they're offering as important content, we will switch what prime time looks like. So it's really about who is giving us what we need to know, and we realize that we need to know that. That's what has been lacking at the National Youth Council. That's what we think we're taking forward. But secondly, that's also not to disabuse ourselves of the challenges we have had at the leadership. I would want to commend that the National Youth Council leaders before me have done a great job. But in other ways, that job has also been lacking in terms of a holistic approach to what the youth need to see. They are on one part political youth who are members of the National Youth Council. Some have different hopes. Some have come in, say, because they think politics makes a lot of money. Others have come in because they are offering a leadership service. Those have to be met midway, The other person is I have come in because I actually think that I believe in a Yeru or I believe in another member of the National Executive Committee or these youth MPs. I think that we are going to finally do something. That one also needs to be met midway. There is a young person who knows no one. who has no connection.
And they're the majority.
They were born like me, your parents are nothing. That young person needs to be made fully. And he needs to feel like this country, I am a part of it, because structure that leads my age group, my generation, makes me feel like I'm a part of it. Are we speaking for their challenges? Can they see that someone is trying to fight for them? We might not achieve, but we need to be seen to be trying to press for that young person's voice to be heard. Because for them, they are, those youth leaders, those district leaders are the only option for their future. They are not even literate enough, some of them, to know what the future should look like. It is us to inform them of how it should look like to tell them how it should be formed.
Mostly talking about those particular young people, there's been a challenge of access to information. And actually, since majority of them have given up.
Yeah.
They are waiting for a loom of miracle, I would say, that they just don't have that hope. What is NYC doing to revitalize the issue of access to information, and not only that, also map up and look at some of the young people who are doing tremendous work and bringing them closer to also inspire others?
So, one, the structure of our country is very interesting. We have a lot of people that are on social media. But that's a lot if you are on social media. And you see them, and you see so many people. But when you bring it on paper, it is not even 30% of the population that's on social media. So social media has people from everywhere, but very few of the people from the whole country. How then do you get young people to access information is by a multifaceted approach. How do we use all available platforms? And that's why for us we're insisting there must be vibrance first of youth MPs in Parliament. That the more young people see who their youth MP is on television, taking interviews, being very critical about positions of government or against government on the interest of young people, that young person that sees that youth MP begins to realize that I think I can communicate. How can I reach them? But also the young people who have telephones, who have communication channels that are technology based, are also not the majority of the young people. That many can access a phone, but very few can be able to place phone calls with those phones because they don't have that money and so on.
Internet.
So the truth is this country has transitioned to some extent in technological advancement, but this country at its core is really still an analog-based situation in terms of human capital development. That analog-based situation means the farmer still needs to be met in his garden or at a local gathering meeting at the village, parish level. How do you reach? The one person who has the phone needs to be the one who communicates the matter. The people at the villages have small radios, but those are usually with the head of the family, The young person does not even have a radio at the village level. So the functionality of governance structures becomes a very critical point of access to information. When I write a circular and it goes down on the status of youth on any matter, and it goes down to the district, they share it. It goes down to the sub-county. Those who don't have smartphones from that level going down, even from the district, can still hear about it in conversation from the leaders. That we have a sitting quarterly, and these are the issues. The chairperson wrote. So this kind of approach, this is what happened when the NRA was in the bush. No, there was no smartphone. There was only one phone call radio, and the phone call, maybe President Museveni, by then called Rebo Museveni, was calling fellow Rebo Rwijema or fellow Rebo Saleh, and Saleh needed to deliver the communication. Systems, structures actually work because they are the ones that the world has depended on for so long. When we were colonized, such tedious work was done by men who got communication and moved. Communication would move for more than 4 months to reach you. But when it reaches you, you would announce it. You would announce the death of, say, the Duke of Edinburgh, if then there was, and we would mourn in Uganda 4 months later. Because that's when we have got to know that the Duke of Edinburgh has died. Then we declare national mourning because they were not able to. Then the fax machine came. Then we were able now to get near real time. So these things depend on human structures functioning. So for me, that's the goal.
The student connection.
Young people in schools, first, we are in a time when we are very challenged. There is, for me, a necessary conversation at the level of government on how the schools are going to run, that because they must run. We can't lose 5 years of education. We will lose pace with the world, it's just clear. You cannot have 5 years when you've produced no doctor, no engineer, no economist, no. 5 years is when people move from being an S6 leaver to a master's graduate from Harvard in an economics field and to working for the World Bank. You cannot say the other Ugandan is non-competitive in those 5 years. What is happening now, for example, is that there's a COVID situation. We must find a way of working around it to ensure that education goes on. So that young person in school has that structure of UNSA that they are working with. But in the totality, that young person is a part of a bigger policy construct that needs to be a progressive policy construct. So the questions we've asked ourselves.
Like the guild, how does the guild president feel or be part of the NYC? The same, how do the NEC members of UNSA feel and be part of the NYC?
So that's what I was saying, that the questions we've asked ourselves is, how do you have the voices of those youth active in what we are doing? The National Youth Council has a secretary for Students Affairs. What we are moving to do now is to amend in our own act, the Secretary of Students Affairs is an ex-officio to UNSA. So they can sit in the UNSA NEC, okay, in meetings. They don't contribute, they don't vote, but they listen in. But also, we are building a stronger relationship with the students' body that they can be able to send us their resolutions on actionable areas. That as a National Youth Council, we can actually help you push this, because we also have Students Affairs here, but we also realize that it's an important part for us to build upwards, that we might be from 18 to 30, there are students from 15, they are still coming to 18 to 30. The reason why we are interested in who is president is because we are also going upwards, and we want the country to work for all generations, even if we are representative of a particular one. And it's not static. So today you are a student, tomorrow you are a youth. You may still be a student or not, but you are now under the National Youth Council bracket. So really, that's how they come in. The other thing we are doing now is to say we need to have an annual platform for interaction with student leaders. Student leaders does not mean every secondary school, that's a very big number. But you can say the public universities are represented by a number of guild presidents. The private universities are represented by a number of guild presidents. Secondary schools are represented by a number of, if there is a National Students Council, National Prefectorate or Prefects Council, that used to be there. It can still be there now. And then you get 5 or 4 to represent them. But the biggest platform is UNSA must be on the table, guild presidents must be on the table, private public balance must be on the table, National Youth Council and youth members of parliament. Then you have an agenda built up and you can move on it.
Wow, this is a massive human resource structure.
Yeah, it has to be massive.
So, this is the last bits of it. Let's talk about the other resources. One of the things that young people have been saying, you've been in campaigns, our money, we vote you, and you don't come back, so pay us before we vote you. And then, because we'll come back after 5 years. So there's that whole construct of money and not service delivery back to them. So what are the programs that NYC has in plan together with the ministry to reach out to the young people? And of course, how are resources appropriated, and what is the stake in decision making as NEC?
Thank you. Firstly, I have always said that if you pay for your casting of the vote, if you're paid, you should know that you're selling something. And even in my campaigns, that was a very big strategy. That are we giving away 5 years based on money, or we are claiming 5 years based on ideas? Because in the 5, you can't be paid more than you will earn in 5 years if you have good leadership. That's just standard principle. So that's a comment on that. So what is actually happening? The National Youth Council is first fighting for programs of financing, to be very clear. The government now is moving into implementing a parish development model, claiming that goes nearer to the people from the sub-county. Substantively, that's true. For the National Youth Council, the question is that replacing anything? Government said, yes, we need to draw money from youth livelihood program and have a bigger basket of a bigger pool with bigger people, not segregated. It, on one part, makes all the sense you need. On the other part, might disadvantage young people. So we ask, are there young people in the parish development model? Is there a quota system? How is the situation better on a cost-benefit analysis for the YLP program and the parish development program? As you're doing that, we're also conscious of what that contribution would look like to the entire country. I can assure you, without a shade of doubt, that we are very particular on every government development program being specific on how the young people benefit from it. So that is one way we approach policy. And to that extent, we go to any length. With the parish development program, we met the Prime Minister, we wrote the President. It's going to be a key issue of our discussion on International Youth Day with the President, as well as on programs that come in for young people, focusing on them in terms of performance, like the yoga program and so on. However, we also map which categories of young people are not catered for by government. For example, the young person that comes from university, graduates and can't find a job, can't be sent to their parish, because the parish development model is a strategy to remove peasants, the 68% stuck in the subsistence. That model works for them. It doesn't work for the young person whose dreams are in the city. They are educated, they speak the English, they have the ideas, but they don't have the capital. But also, they don't want to be in primary agriculture. They probably can be along the food chain, the value chain of agriculture. So that mapping is what we also do, and then we propose programs. And I can assure you we are working on a program for the graduate youth to see how we present that to government. To consider, if Emma is a law student, I'm a law student, and we have 5 law students, and we have an idea that actually is within law and tech, and it is a breakthrough idea, where do we go in this country? How do we access, as graduates, as people who are educated for the country, how do we access something? If we are from engineering and we have a breakthrough low-cost technology, where do we go? Do we abandon it and first survive, or we can find an avenue that enables us to start on that? Really giving the young people who have capacity a chance, who have learned all of these things, project management, gone through the process of idea creation, or what some people call ideation, and are able to go to the market and look at that strategy. People who can build the networks around the university and professionalism, but lack a kickstart.
But there is a minority group that you haven't tackled.
Yes.
They're both in the professional and the informal sector.
Yes.
That's the people living with disabilities.
Yes. So what we are saying first is there are mapping groups that we need. I mean, there are groups we need to map that we need to put on the table. So I'll talk about the disability group, and this is something that we need to talk about as a nation. There is a law on the buildings, public buildings, having access for disabled people. There is a law on a 1/3 rule for people. For me, I think there should be a law on disabled people being given particular kinds of jobs. You know, there are jobs where the person doesn't need to stand up, the person doesn't need to talk, the person just needs to have hands and be in one place. And the disabled people can do it perfectly, you know, as something. So government should say, in this field, your company, small or medium or large scale, must have at least 30% employees in this area who are disabled. In this particular area. In the others, we don't mind. You need to build some confidence around their capacity, not just giving them representation in parliament. The MPs need to find a way of saying, what does the trade union have where we can take advantage and see like we are a country that's progressing on that part of people. So that's one thing. However, there's also a disability council in the country, Council for Persons with Disability, and also under the ministry. And they are the leading voices in uniting them and trying to push for them. My other position would be, it should be, I've not looked at their law, but if it's like the National Youth Council, it should be a body corporate able to invest.
There was a bill that was tabled
business
by NYC, I think last year, but one to incorporate people with disabilities. Do you, how is it going to be implemented?
Okay.
NYC?
First of all, we already have representatives of persons with disabilities in the NIC structure, at the sub-county and at the district. The challenge with the parish is that there was a concern of numbers. Are you going to be able to get disabled people at every parish? Yeah, but we said, okay, sub-county is a fair representation. The other thing was that if you go lower, people might fake disability. Someone says my disability in a place I can't show you. Now, if you can't show me, I will never know the disability, you know. But also, we can't be hiring doctors to first determine disabilities. So I said, no, let's move higher. We might find for who it is obvious, and it's not a question of argument. Yeah, so yes, we want them on board. The national level is what was contentious. Do you want a national person from disability on the neck and is an individual and might not influence things all the time for his position or her position, or you want to have a position on a matter from the Council of Disabilities? Therefore, you are taking a matter on a legitimate body and it is fully united. So we are not dealing with one opinion. We are dealing with a position of an entity. So yeah, we work in unity with them and we work in convergence as a group.
So in your last minute, how unique again is your neck going to be from all the past regimes, and what promise do you have for the young person out there watching?
Yeah. First and foremost, the National Executive Committee that I lead will be a pro-youth committee in terms of youth times and youth patterns and youth styles.
And
what that means,
I will interpret a bit as you're saying pro-youth. I need you to diversify youth away from the structure, because that's what I'm saying. Pro-youth is not about youth leaders. Pro-youth is about 10 million people, and what their necessities are. Their necessities are in education. And all that facilitates that. How many of us are attending school? How many of us are finishing school? Our concern is, why are we not finishing school? And how do we contribute to that? Their necessities are around issues to do with child and maternal health care, because there are so many young women being married off young, and they can't change that. We may not be able to change that in 5 years of our timing, because in some societies there is so much religious dominance and the definition of an adult is different. In other societies, it is a complex situation around economic returns. We must have a voice in there to try and address that necessity of those communities. There are so many youth who lack jobs, and we must have a contribution in terms of how do we improve the performance of the private sector to create a job boom that needs to improve the chances of young people growing up in Uganda to have an earning when they finish school. There are so many young people who want to do things at different levels, like artists, like sports. We must be able to have a voice on all those issues and have an actively influencing voice, not a voice which is for the sake of charity, looking like you have spoken about something. No, we must see how do we measure our progress on these matters. And for me, that is really the critical necessity. And the simplest way, how does someone partner to work with the NYC, and how does someone support programs of the NYC for the civil society partners and the private sector partners who are out there?
So the National Youth Council has a website which has our contacts. Our website is www.nycuganda.org.ug. Okay, That's our website. I think we are working on some changes on it. Even that address might change. But if someone went to Twitter and looked for us at NYC of Uganda, they'll definitely find us. Facebook is blocked in Uganda, so we are not offering it out currently. But also that's also a conversation we are involved in. We strongly believe that giving Ugandans a chance involves looking now beyond the political times to the new emerging necessity, and seeing that we can work with young people where they are, not insisting that they should come to where we are. So that's also there. So that's really easy. You can look for some of us on social media, and then we can have those conversations. But importantly, you can also reach out to our secretariat in Ntinda, the National Youth Council. If that's hard to find, you can look for us at the Ministry of Gender. They will point you to us. That's very clear as well.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank you so
Jacob, and for your time.
Thank you, Amma.
I'd like to thank everyone who has been watching. Please, if you have a question, if you have anything, please leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll be free. I believe the chairperson will be free to answer some of your comments when we are able to reach out to him. And I'd like to remind you, do not forget to subscribe, comment, and share this video. Thank you so much.